Good morning, friends. This is a video demonstration of the most advanced and modern EBOO system. This is also lecture 26 of Advanced Ozone course. IAOS system believes that EBOO is extracorporeal blood oxygen ozonization. Hemodialysis has nothing to do with EBOO. IAOS also believes that filtration has no role in EBOO. Ozonization must be done in borosilicate, flint-free glass bottles. Use of tiny doses and low concentrations of ozone must be discouraged. With IAOS systems, we recommend 350,000 micrograms to 500,000 micrograms ppps, meaning per patient per session doses. At 80 to 100 micrograms per ml, if 4 to 5 liters of ozonated oxygen flows through the EBOO flask, the total ozone administered per patient per session will be 400,000 to 500,000 micrograms. The following are the steps of IAOS protocol. This is the most important step. First, check that veins are available. Donor vein should preferably be 16G. In case good vein is not available, an 18G vein can be used. But if you are not able to get that, the step will be told you later. The recipient vein of 18G is desirable, but for recipient we can go a little below at 20. If 18G vein cannot be identified or unavailable, the donor site has to be a central line or the procedure must be abandoned. Do not attempt EBOO with a 22 or 23G venflon. It simply does not work and will cause you stress. The first step is taking two 5cc syringes, prime them with 1 ml of 5000 units of heparin with 4 ml of distilled water. So now we have created two priming syringes. A normal saline bottle is hung on the stand and the remaining 15,000 IU in 3 ml is injected into the bottle. The syringe alone is removed while the needle is retained in the bottle to act as an air vent. The donor vein is now located and identified, and after a tourniquet application, the venflon is inserted and the preloaded heparin syringe is used to flush the venflon and the syringe is left there. The IAOS EBOO donor set is opened and the parts are identified. In the donor transfusion set, there are two bulbs and a lure lock. The lure lock goes into the patient. The bulb with the filter goes into the EBOO flask, and the bulb without the filter goes into the bottom of the 500 ml of saline which has already been heparinized. That is why we first hung the transfusion set and gave heparin from the top of the bottle so that there are no side leaks when the infusion set bulb is pushed into the bottom. To repeat, the bulb without filter is inserted into the bottom part of heparin saline bottle, and now the control flow is opened to prime the entire system with heparin. So we must see heparin coming out of the lower lock and heparin coming out of the filter portion. After priming, both the heparin flow and blood flow stoppers are closed. The perfusion set is switched on and checked. The flow direction is set. It must draw blood from the patient and put it into the EBOO flask. Starting flow is set at 6 to 7 ml per minute. The EBOO flask is now opened. On the top, after we remove the aluminium foil, there is a big circle, there is a small circle and a plus mark. Those are identified in the silicone bottle. The big circle is for blood in, the plus mark is for ozone in, the small circle is for exiting of the waste. A 16G needle bent at right angle is attached to a silicone tube for collecting the waste. This is the first step, as we do not want pressure to build up in the bottle. The other end is placed into the glass bottle. Another 16G needle is bent at right angles and attached to a silicone tube, which is then attached to the ozone out of the generator. The part of the EBOO donor set with filter bulb is now pushed into the big circle at the top of the flask. Once all these tubes are in place, the EBOO bottle is put into the stand with or without UV radiation. Currently, I personally use UV radiation. The perfusion silicone length is now put into the IAOS perfusion tube. This is a very important step, and the correct silicone part has to go into the pump. The silicone tube, after the three-way bivalve connecting the donor and heparin flow, has to go into the perfusion pump. I repeat, this is the most important step. Silicone tube after. It is incorrect to put the silicone tube before the three-way into the perfusion pump. The regulator is set at the correct flow and the machine is switched on so that the EBOO bottle slowly fills up with ozone. After ensuring that the flow direction of the pump is correct and the pump is switched off, the syringe from donor side is removed and the lower lock of the EBOO set is connected. The perfusion pump is switched on. At the same time, the flow lock on the transfusion set is opened to allow the blood to flow into the EBOO chamber. That is a very important step. Do not forget to open the flow into the bottle. The donor blood is slowly sucked and begins to rise into the set. Heparin flow is now opened and set about 8 drops a minute. Once the blood reaches the bivalve of heparin saline, then the heparin is reduced to 1 to 2 drops per minute and continues at this speed throughout the procedure. As the blood reaches the bottle and starts filling it, the ozone bubbling can be appreciated. We must wait till the EBOO bottle is half full before switching on the UV lights and inserting the outflow tubes. 2 videos are shown subsequently, and this is the stage where the recipient vein is identified, a venflon is inserted, a syringe with dilute heparin is attached and the tourniquet is removed.
Sorry, I can't tell what speaker you are referring to.
The tourniquet always remains on the donor side while it is released on the recipient side once the cannula enters the vein. Only in this way adequate amount of blood will flow in while it is being ozonized. Ozonated blood flow is started. The waste froth generated depends on the patient. Subjects for performance enhancement produce minimal froth, while rheumatoid arthritis or post malignancy have extensive bubbled waste. As all the ozone is absorbed, no ozone destroyer is needed. The total procedure duration is between 20 to 40 minutes to administer between 200,000 to 400,000 micrograms of ozone. So the ozone machine is kept at 1 by 8th or 1 by 16th of a liter and is continuously bubbled to ozonate the blood. Monitors for pulse, BP, heart rate and oxygen saturation are recommended. In young healthy patients, I do not use them. Once the desired dosage of ozone is administered, the donor site is opened up and the venflon locked. Now, the tube is held by the operator till the entire blood in the tubes empties into the EBOO chamber. Once that is done, the tubings from the upper part are removed and discarded. The ozonated blood is allowed to flow into the patient. If the flow becomes slow, an air vent can be introduced from below or above to get the atmospheric pressure into the bottle and allow gravity to work. After completion of procedure and removal of venflons, a very tight padding is needed. The subject is instructed to keep it on for 4 hours to ensure that the venipuncture sites do not bleed due to heparin. Ozone therapists desirous of acquiring the IAOS EBOO system can contact us. Please send WhatsApp messages only, as calls on this number are not picked up by me. Now we have 2 patients or 2 subjects, both normal individuals who are undergoing an EBOO procedure, and the whole procedure is shown to you step by step. Let's start with the first patient. A 5 ml syringe is used. 1 ml of heparin is taken into the syringe. This is 1000 ml. This 5000 units per ml, and so we have collected 1 ml, which is 5000 units, and this is diluted with 5 ml of distilled water, so that the syringe now contains 5 ml of 1000 units per ml of heparin. A second syringe is opened and the identical steps are repeated to have 2 pre-loaded syringes, each with 5 ml of 1000 microgram per ml diluted heparin. This amount of heparin will not be used during the procedure. These are just used to flush the venflons and cannulae. Once the two syringes are primed and ready, they are kept aside separately. The patient himself is an orthopedic surgeon, so detailed explanations are necessary. A third syringe is now opened up, taken up, and a 500 ml bottle of normal saline is hung on the stand. We do not inject the heparin from the bottom because we do not want any leaks. The remaining 3 ml of heparin, which will amount to 15,000 international units, is drawn into a syringe. The needle is pushed through the top half of the bottle and injected. Thereafter, the needle is left in place to act as an air vent. The bottle is shaken a little. So now we have 2 syringes and 1 bottle preloaded with heparin. We check the EBOO flask, and now we have to open the EBOO set donor set. The recipient set is kept aside for a while. So now we can see what are the essential prerequisites: the EBOO bottle, the donor set, and 2 preloaded syringes. This is the recipient set. Apart from this, we need 2 cannulas or venflons. Here our subject has got very good veins, so we will be using a 16 gauge cannula for the donor site and an 18 gauge for the recipient site. The vein is identified and the cannula is inserted. A good nurse will get a line in a single shot. The primed syringe with heparin is now locked to the vein, and the venflon is anchored sorry, the venflon is anchored to the hand. The syringe stays in place. Protective eyewear is given to the patient. The set 1 is opened. We remove the set and the parts are identified and shown. So the bulb without the filter goes into the heparin. The bulb with the filter goes into the EBOO bottle, and the silicone part with a lower lock goes to the patient. The set is untangled, the parts are identified. The first step is to prime the set. So the bulb without filter goes into the heparin, and once the flow is opened, we wait till both ends are flush with heparin. The top part of the EBOO bottle is now opened, and there are 3 marks, one for insertion of the bulb of the inflow, through the plus mark the ozone in needle is inserted. For that we take a 16 gauge needle bend it at right angles, connect it to the tube and push it through the plus mark on the top of the bottle. Many people ask me that I have just plucked a silicone tube from the stand and I am putting it into the bottle. What about sterility? Ozone, as we know, is a very powerful sterilizing agent, and thus the inside of the silicone tube will be fully sterilized while ozone goes through. The main infusion set and the parts which go through which blood travels have to be absolutely sterile, whereas the ozone entry and the ozone out waste pipes do not need to be sterile. The exit pipe has nothing to do with the entry of the blood into the patient. So now we have three tubes on the top of the bottle. The bulb through which the blood will enter, the plus through which ozone will enter, and the small circle through which the waste will be discarded. The stand is raised to a specific height so that outflow will be good. At this stage, both the heparin flow and the blood flow are locked. The machine is now put to 6 to 7 ml per minute. We watch the rotation and ensure that the direction is correct. So once this is tested, this is a very important step. The part that comes from the patient and goes to the three-way should not go into the perfusion pump. The part beyond the three-way, after the mixing of heparin, that is the part that is going into the perfusion pump. The pump is opened up and it is being fixed, it is locked and sealed. Now the lower end of the tubing is connected to the donor site, but before that we have to start the flow of ozone so that the bottle gets flushed with ozone and the patient is ready for attachment of the donor vein with the lower lock of the donor. We switch on the machine and watch as the blood is slowly drawn into the tube. It is incorrect to start the perfusion pump at a high speed because the moment it starts sucking at very high speed to start with, the vein may collapse and may close against the tip of the venflon. Until now, 8 to 10 drops per minute of heparin are being transfused. Once the blood reaches the three-way, we will reduce the flow to ensure that only 1 to 2 drops per minute are given, and that continues throughout the procedure. We can now see that the blood is reaching almost near the three-way heparin flow has been reduced and the blood is being pumped up into the EBOO bottle. We wait till the blood enters the EBOO bottle. The blood is entering, the heparin flow has been reduced, and once the free flow of blood starts into the bottle, we can slowly increase the speed of perfusion. You can see that the dark colored blood has been entering the bottle, which is a venous blood. The recipient site can be now identified, and here we are only using an 18 gauge cannula. He has got good veins, so that we will get good speed while the return is in process. We do not even want to use the elbow. He has got better veins in the wrist. A word of caution: it is always better to use a donor site in the elbow to avoid cramps in the hand. Once the vein is flushed and is seen as patent, we can anchor the vein. The UV lights are not yet switched on. Venous blood of dark color is going into the EBOO flask, and because of the bubbling of the ozone has turned tomato red or cherry red. Now we can switch on the UV light until 50% of the bottle is filled. We do not start the recipient transfusion. Very important step. So we wait till 50% of bottle is full. So we are waiting patiently for the bottle to fill up until half. Once it is filled up to half, we are using the recipient set, which is inserted into the bottom of the EBOO flask. You can see that we are using only ozone compatible stuff. No filters are being used because, in our opinion, EBOO does not have anything to do with filtration. Ozonization in itself makes the blood become cherry red. The recipient thing is opened and air is vented out. The recipient line is now attached. Even from this distance on the camera, the color difference between donor and recipient site is clearly visible. This is a donor site before going into the machine, and the other side is a donor site even after mixing with heparin. The recipient blood is like tomato or cherry red. Now we can increase the speed of the perfusion pump, and the important lesson is the inflow and the outflow speeds should be matched. The foamy froth paste is coming out and the same is being collected in a glass bottle downstairs. The process is now in action, and we can increase or decrease the concentration of ozone. We have to calculate the correct amount of ozone which we are going to administer, and that depends on the flow rate, the concentration and the duration. You can see that until now, when most of the procedure is nearing completion, very small amount of heparin has been used. Less than 30% of the heparinized saline has been used, and the two syringes were almost 4 cc each when they were discarded. Once we have completed the duration, the donor site is opened up, the venflon is capped, and all blood from the donor site is allowed to be pushed up into the bottle. We can increase the perfusion pump speed dramatically so that the donor site tubing becomes emptied fast. When the last drop of blood has entered the EBOO flask, the assembly from the top can be removed, including the heparin tube, and the whole set can be discarded. So you can see the perfusion pump is now switched off. The blood into the EBOO flask is removed. The set, including the ozone, is removed. The ozone flow is stopped. We have already administered in this patient about 500,000 gamma or 500,000 milligrams or 500 grams of ozone. You can see the amount of heparinized saline left. So total effective ozone, total effective heparin given to this patient has been lesser than 2000 international units. The tubes from the top are removed and discarded. The waste tube is still kept in place, which will act as an air vent. The flow into the recipient site is increased, and once the froth and foam has settled in the bottle, the proximal tube is removed and the last of the blood is allowed to flow from the EBOO flask to the patient. In case the blood flow becomes slow, you can see how red and bright the ozonized blood is. An air vent can be added from the bottom to increase the flow rate. Once the entire blood is ozonized, we can remove the bottom part from the bottle and ensure that the whole of it goes back into the patient. Till then, we can appreciate the very bright cherry or tomato red blood that is entering the patient's body. Once the entire ozonated blood enters the patient's body without the loss or wastage of any blood, Once the procedure is over, the bottle can be removed and you can see the froth that has come out because of the waste. The doctor who underwent the EBOO wants to look at his own EBOO bottle, and that is the still picture of the world's first borosilicate flint free EBOO flask. The same procedure on the same day was undergone by another MD physician who does not have any medical complaints, but it was done for general wellness, hair fall, and performance enhancement. 1 ml of 5000 units heparin is mixed with 4 ml of distilled water to make the first priming syringe. This syringe is kept aside and the same procedure is repeated to make another primed syringe of 5 ml containing 1000 units per ml of heparin. The two syringes are set aside. One will be locked to the donor site and the other will be locked with the recipient site. A 500 ml bottle of normal saline is now taken and hung on the drip stand. Another 5 ml syringe is opened up and the remaining 3 ml of heparin amounting to 15,000 units is extracted and pushed into the top of the syringe. This way, the saline bottle of 500 ml will be diluted with 3000 international units of heparin. We do not use large volumes of heparin for the patients, and of this 25,000 units which we have unwrapped, small amount will be used. So this shows the complete set of items needed for performing an IAOS EBOO procedure. The heparin saline is shaken and hung. We check that all materials are ready and in position before the donor vein is punctured. Nevertheless, we must take care to ensure that the vein is available. The bottle comes autoclaved and then ethylene oxide sterilized in dual packing. They are made up of flint-free borosilicate glass with a stainless steel diffuser. The newer bottles do not have a label pasted on them, but is pasted on a plastic cover to ensure that there is a full penetration of ultraviolet light when it is put in a UV stand. A good trick is to use plenty of sanitizer to clean all the fat and dirt on the skin to ensure that the veins become prominent. Fortunately, this subject also has very good veins and it has been very easy to insert a 16G cannula. In case we are not able to get a 16 or 18G venflon into the patient, we must take the help of an anesthetist to use a central vein for donor site. Once the cannula is in position, the heparin priming tube is attached to the venflon, which is anchored. The tourniquet is retained in place. The donor set is now opened. The parts are identified as has been explained before. The lower lock portion goes into the patient's donor vein. The bulb without the filter will go into the heparinized saline. The bulb with filter will go into the top of the EBOO bottle. So the bulb without the filter is now inserted into the bottom of the EBOO bottle, heparinized saline bottle. It is opened to allow the entire set to be primed. We now ensure that heparinized saline has flooded the interior of the complete set. Heparin is now closed. The blood part is now closed. The top of the bottle is opened and through the large circle, the bulb with the filter is inserted into the bottle. Once the whole set has been primed, it is important to close both heparin and blood parts. The top has got 3 markings, a small circle, a plus and a big circle. It is through the big circle that the blood in set is pushed. We take a 16G thick needle. The same is bent at right angles, connected to a tube. Actually, both the waste out and ozone in tubes are made in a similar way. This is an ozone in tube which is going into the plus side of the bottle. We can feel the needle entering the stainless steel diffuser in the bottle and should enter freely. Another needle is bent at right angles, attached to an ozone tube, to a silicone tube, and the same goes into a waste bottle. So one tube goes into the ozone machine, the other tube goes into the waste bottle. The plus mark is for the ozone machine and the small circle is for the waste. The tube attached to the needle which has a plus mark is now pushed into the ozone out part of the ozone generator. it is very important to emphasize that high quality ozone generators have to be used. The perfusion pump is checked for the speed. The rubber part, the silicone part, after the bivalve connecting to this heparinized saline is put into the machine and locked in place. The silicone portion before is not suitable. Once everything is locked in place, the blood flow part is opened up, the priming syringe is extracted, and the blood flow is started until the blood reaches the junction of bivalve where the heparin is being mixed. The speed should be low. The oxygen cylinder, the oxygen regulator is opened and ozone at 80 to 100 microgram per ml is allowed to flood into the bottle. In the initial stages, it is important to keep the perfusion pump at a low speed. Once it has crossed the bivalve, the flow of the heparinized saline is slowed down to 1 to 2 drops per minute, no more. The inflow is allowed to enter the bottle as the beginning part of the blood is mixed with the heparin primed earlier. It is looking rather watery and red rather than the thick venous blood which normally goes into the bottle. We can now increase the speed of the perfusion pump to about 30 or 40 drops per minute. The ozone is being bubbled through the heparin mixed blood at this stage, and we are now increasing the speed to about 30 to 40 ml per minute, so that in about 30 minutes 1.5 liters of blood would have passed through the EBOO system, and in this duration 350,000 to 500,000 gamma would have diffused into the blood. In young patients, we can withdraw the blood at a very rapid pace, whereas in older patients, we have to be a little careful. As the blood volume remains undisturbed, the patient's own blood in the same volume as it extracted is returned back to the patient. There are no volume related issues. Recipient venflon is a thinner venflon, 18 or even 20 gauge, and at this stage we can get the vein in and attach a primed loaded syringe which we had prepared earlier to keep the flow and passage free. Once we have ensured that the vein is perfect, we anchor it. The recipient transfusion set is now opened. We wait till at least 50% of the bottle has been full before we start transfusing in the patient, the transfusion set is pushed through the large circle on the bottom of the bottle. The bulb is primed and allowed to flow. Once it is air vented on a cup, this can be attached to the recipient side. We can see that not only have we been very careful with the veins, but also the amount of heparin that has been used is extremely less. The inflow and outflow speeds are matched. On the donor side, the tourniquet is retained on the recipient side, the tourniquet is switched off. The blood flowing in is dark in color. The ozonized blood is tomato red when it is going back into the patient. We can compare the colors of the blood going in and coming out, and the difference is startling and evident. The ultraviolet light has been switched on for added benefits. This is switched on only when about half of the EBOO flask has been filled with blood which has been ozonized thoroughly. The IAOS system is famous for its simplicity, and in about 25 to 30 minutes, when 500,000 micrograms of ozone have been administered or admixed with the blood, diffused in the blood, the donor site is disconnected. For obvious reasons, we have not included the whole duration of blood being pumped in from one side and pumped out from the other. After disconnection of the donor site, the speed of the perfusion pump can be increased so that the whole blood goes quickly into the donor bottle. Thus, heparin is switched off as we no longer need it. The return, you can see the heparin bottle, hardly about 150 ml or 500 ml have been consumed. So the total dose of heparin in this case was less than 8,000 units. Once the last drop of blood has gone in, we switch off the ozone machine and the bulb on the top of the bottle is removed. The connection with the saline bottle is also extracted. The ozone needle is taken out. The waste needle, however, is retained till some froth and foam remains in the bottle. The whole assembly, including the heparin bottle, the saline, its tubings and connections are removed. The perfusion pump is opened up and the tubes are removed. This assembly is now discarded. The recipient set is in place and we wait till the bottle is empty and all of the blood is retransfused into the patient. At this stage, when the flow slows down, an air vent can be inserted from the bottom. Once the bottle is near empty, the drip set can be pulled out a little and then it is held high in the air to ensure that the entire blood goes back into the patient. We do not like to waste any blood in the transfusion sets, as the patient was a healthy MD doctor. We have not bothered to put cardiac monitoring or monitor his oxygen saturation. In patients with comorbidities and older patients, it is best to have some form of monitoring, both for our safety and for the patient's satisfaction. After the recipient blood completely goes into the patient, the recipient set is removed and locked in place. Subsequently, the venflons will be removed, a bandage applied and a tight padding made. This is the first patient, an orthopedic surgeon, who has come all the way from Andhra Pradesh, and here are the group of doctors, including the two who received EBOO in a single session from me. Thank you very much for watching the video. Thank you.